CNI Digital Scholarship Planning webinar series. And if you've participated in previous sessions, welcome back. I know many of you are working from home and some of you are back on campus. I hope you're all doing well during this difficult time of the pandemic. I'm Joan Lippincott, Associate Executive Director Emerita of CNI, and I'm moderating the 9 sessions of this series. Each of you is registered for all sessions. If you need to miss some, we'll have recordings available for all sessions, as well as a set of questions to guide planning discussions on your own campus. Both the video and discussion questions for sessions 1 through 5 are now on the website, and thanks so much to the CNI staff for getting those materials up so quickly. We have 2 speakers for this session, and we'll take questions after each. Please type your questions in the chat box at any time. In addition, after the formal 1-hour session is over, we'll open the mics in case some of you wish to verbally ask questions of the speakers. The chat box is also available to communicate with each other, or with me, or our technical lead, Beth Sechrist. During the presentations, all participants will be muted. For this 6th session, we'll learn about initiatives in teaching and learning. I'm pleased to welcome our presenters today. I've found their work inspiring. Emily Sherwood, Director of the Digital Scholarship Lab at the University of Rochester, and Damecia Donahue, a librarian and overlord of the Tech Bunker at Wayne State University. Their bios are on the webinar site, and I won't take any more time with introductions to give our speakers more time. So over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Joan. And thank you everybody for coming. So I'm going to start today by asking a question, and I actually do want you to answer in the chat. So this is a little unconventional for a webinar, but please do feel free to answer the questions in the chat. So what do faculty development workshops for digital scholarship look like on your campus? And we've heard a lot of really great speakers over the course of this webinar series talk about the different types of initiatives that they've been running, what types of workshops or events that they hold, how those are tailored, but I'm wondering, what do they look like for you? So I'm gonna give you just a moment, but hopefully some people will actually type in the chat. If not, I will get around to answering my own question. But what do they look like? What do digital scholarship workshops look like on your campus? Or events? No one? They don't. Oh, Becky, I'm sorry. Well, then we'll give you some ideas in just a moment. Good, so training in R or Python or text analysis. So we have tool-focused workshops, right, that are training in specific tools. Philosophical discussions, so we might have like reading groups or around certain topics. Ooh, I love this. Introductory content or overviews followed by a demo, hopefully some hands-on. So we might introduce a topic or a tool and then follow it with some hands-on topics. Ooh, external speakers, we have those too. Concepts, tools, these are great. Very preliminary. Oh, very low attendance. You're actually thinking about my next slide. So we have lots of different types of programming that we run for digital scholarship, right? We have reading groups, we have working groups, we have speaker series, we have conferences, we have showcase events where we're highlighting a certain project or a certain tool. We have a lot of tool training, right? Lots and lots of skill-based workshops. We might run some hackathons, practice sessions, all of those things. But as we started to see even in the comments right now, we also have a lot of challenges. How many of you have worked really hard to develop these tool-based trainings, and then you have 2 or 3 people show up to them? Maybe, occasionally. Yeah, right. And it's sort of heartbreaking, especially my new employees when they come in and they start running all of these workshops and they're like, but like 4 people showed up to take Unity. And I was like, I know, it's okay. It'll be fine. So we have attendance issues. I love going to new workshops that introduce me to a new tool or a new technology. But even I, like a week later, a month later, 6 months later, have a hard time retaining the information, right? So I learn a new tool, I'm introduced to a new tool. And then if I'm not using that tool, I forget that tool. Anyone else? Maybe? Then we also have, and maybe this isn't familiar to you, faculty who email you a week before, if you're lucky, possibly a day before, they want you to come and run a workshop in their class. probably for an assignment they haven't told you about. Or maybe it's just a workshop. They just want you to come and run a tool. It's also possible that they're at a conference that day and they just need someone to come and cover class. Any of that sound familiar? And then there's the question of sustainability. Sustainability is a huge issue. So what if suddenly all of our faculty want to work with us? How do we manage to be in all of the classes, supporting all of the digital scholarship? How do we manage to scale this work up, or at least be able to train our faculty in a way that they can take on some of it themselves? So I started thinking about these questions and these challenges, and I started trying to imagine how I might be able to develop a workshop that, instead of showcasing a tool or showcasing another big project, instead, I wanted to introduce faculty to how I want to work with them. And so it was sort of a mind shift. How do I develop a workshop that isn't introducing a new tool or a new project, but trying to come up with a model of how I want to work, how I want to collaborate with them? And so I started thinking about my goals for this type of workshop. And what I wanted was, I wanted them to come to me right at the brainstorming phase. And that's actually true if I'm thinking about a course project or if I'm thinking about a larger digital scholarship project. I want to be part of the planning. I want to brainstorm with them, and I want to work with them at the outset. I want to know what their learning objectives are. I really don't want another digital project dropped into a course just for the sake of doing something fun. I want to make sure that when we're planning an assignment, it's well scaffolded and aligns with their learning objectives. I want to know what works in their classroom. They might have a really great written traditional assignment, or a really good exam that actually models what they want to get at, what they want their students to learn, what they want them to be able to show at the end of that semester. And so I want to know what works in their class. I also want to know what doesn't work, because maybe we can fix that somehow. And then also, I really want faculty to test run assignments, and I get so much pushback on this. But could you imagine how, and I'm putting myself in that, how much better my teaching would be if I ran all my assignments first? Whew. And there's a lot of reasons for this, which I'll talk about more later, but I want them to have a basic familiarity with the technology so that they can answer the 101 questions when they come up. And I want them to have a sample for students, which becomes very important when you're talking about non-traditional projects. And I also want them to be able to test run the assignment so they can surface the issues and understand where their students might get stuck, how much time it's going to take, and whether or not the assignment actually works to reach their learning objectives. So I came up with a new form of workshop. So this is the call for what I call just the introduction to digital pedagogy. And one of the things that I want to point out is that this is a 2-day workshop. I'll talk more about that later. It's a short module. This is not an entire semester-long project. This is to come up with an assignment. So I want it scoped. It is based on the learning outcome, as you can see. And so the end goal, the tool, isn't the reason. It's actually in service of a learning outcome. And then I also want them to think about digital literacy. That's always part of it. So here's the problems with running a workshop this way. One, I have to be flexible. I have to have a team who can teach multiple things, and I have to be able to trust that they can do that, and they have to be able to trust me that we'll get through it. Because you can't over-plan for this type of workshop, because you don't know going in what the projects are going to be that you're going to help develop throughout the workshop. So there is a level of trust that you have to have. But if we can do that, it actually works pretty well. So this is the sample schedule for if we're thinking about a 2-day workshop, which is really about a 1.5-day workshop. And you can see, you can read through it, and the slides will be there to review later. But I've been running these types of workshops since about 2015, and I started them at Bucknell University, and now I've been running them at University of Rochester. And I will admit that ideally, I want to do a 2.5-day workshop. And honestly, I've gotten them down to 1.5-day, and I think they're a bit rushed. But there are always people who want things to take less time. That's just true. So why is this approach effective? Well, I think that there's several reasons. One, and the big one, the one that I started off with, is it introduces faculty to how we can collaborate. and how we want to. So it's not just teaching them a tool, but actually letting me brainstorm with them at the outset and talk them through their challenges, help them come up and identify the right tool for the assignment, and then help them craft the assignment, help them think through things like assessment. I'm asking them to learn the technology. And part of that in the test running of the assignment is I want them, as I said, to be able to answer basic questions in the classroom, because that reduces the number of times I have to go into a classroom. And I want them to understand what about the technology works or doesn't work so that they can anticipate where their students might have problems. And I want them to have a sense of what they're asking their students to do. Many times I've helped a faculty member think about running like a digital essay assignment, and they don't understand it takes longer for their students than writing an essay. And so we can have those conversations and they can start to see really in concrete terms how long this might take. I also want them to walk out with a win. So faculty over 2 days develop a module, and it might not be perfect by the time they walk out, but they know what they need to do to get it there. I also want them to know whether or not the assignment works for their learning outcomes. One of my favorite stories is we were working with a faculty member, first time taking any sort of digital approach in a class. And over the course of 2 days, she developed a timeline assignment. And she had run a similar assignment in a traditional paper style in her class the year before. And as she started test running her assignment, she realized that she was making all of the mistakes that she had chastised her students for doing the year before. So she was falling into her own bad habits. And what we realized is it wasn't the right assignment then for her learning outcomes. Now, it might have seemed like a failure. Here was a faculty member who spent 2.5 days with me and walked out and did not incorporate a digital project in a course. But I see it as a success because thinking through that carefully meant she didn't fail in the first time that she tried to run a digital assignment in a class. And it also meant that she still learned how I wanted to work with her. And so when she came back in the fall to talk about a research project, she understood how we could work together. And so it was also about building that relationship and building that trust. It also helps build community. Faculty get to learn from each other in this scenario. And it's amazing to watch faculty across disciplines take a lot of joy in understanding they have the same questions about their pedagogy. They have the same challenges, and they like to learn from each other and get ideas from each other. And then again, it helps towards sustainability. As we build these programs, we can't be in more and more courses. At some point, we need the faculty to take some ownership of that technology. And some of them are better at it than others, and that will always be the case. And asking them to learn the technology and asking them to present to their peers, which they have to do at the end of the workshop, they have to show they've engaged and they've thought about the assignment and that they've learned some of the technology. And this model allows us to reach more faculty. It allows us to impact courses in a more meaningful and intentional way. And it honestly allows us to have more input in how the assignments are developed. So as I said, there are some caveats. There's always going to be people who say, I want this to take less time or more time, and I really just want to learn a tool. And that's fine. This workshop isn't probably for them. But it's a good start for a lot of people. And then came 2020. So as we've heard in a lot of the webinars through this series, things changed this year. And suddenly we were being asked to do different things, or we were changing how we worked, or we were asked to be doing more things. And so at the end of the spring semester, our assistant provost came to us, and she was starting to already think about preparing faculty for the fall. So in the end of May, she asked if we would run a series of workshops to help faculty think beyond Zoom, to help them imagine digital projects that might engage their students in a meaningful way, and have them start thinking about it now. And so in 3 weeks, we put together 5 thematic-based workshops and a digital assignment design workshop, similar to the model that we've run previously, and ran them over the month of June. So 2 a week for 3 weeks in June. And yes, I realize that I just told you that I prefer assignment-based workshops rather than tool-based workshops, and that's still true. So though we have sort of thematic, more tool-based workshops structured here, this is the general outline for all of those thematic workshops. The major activities we had within each of those workshops were focused on getting faculty to think about assignment design. So we had faculty come in and do showcase and talk about assignments they had run in their classes previously that fit within the theme. We had an introduction to the thematic topic. We had a hands-on exploration section that again was thinking about course design and assignment design. I always run a how did they make that exercise, which is based on the work of Miriam Posner. But the questions for this sort of project assignment reflection was really about how that particular tool or method might be applied in their discipline and then in their courses. And so all of our activities were still getting them to think about assignments. And then we ended, of course, with a 2-day, again, project design workshop. And while that was a little different than we've run in the past, we had explicitly asked people to have taken one of the thematic workshops in order to participate in the assignment design workshop. And so they had the opportunity there to do some initial exploration and then come and really think in an in-depth way about how they would put that tool into their class. So by the numbers, we had 53 faculty and graduate students register for these 6 workshops. 43 attended, so that's pretty good numbers in terms of not too much in attrition. Many, over half of them, registered for multiple workshops. And we had a wait list for 3 of the 6 workshops, including over 20 attendees for 3 of the 6 workshops. The reach was 27 departments across all 5 of our colleges, which is pretty unusual for us. And so I just want to, for a moment, very briefly, take a look at the departments we reached. So departments, programs, and institutes. We have a mix at our university. So when I first started talking to the assistant provost, the goal really was to get faculty to think through assignments that would use digital tools to engage their students more in a really meaningful way. The secret goal, and maybe always my secret goal, so I guess it's not really a secret, is I want to highlight the diverse expertise across our library and show that it's not just the Digital Scholarship Lab that can help support assignment design and digital scholarship assignments in classes or even digital scholarship projects. And really the larger goal, and the goal that I've been talking about throughout my talk today, is to think about making sure that faculty understand how I want to collaborate with them, how we can work with them. And I'd like to end today by thanking the Digital Projects and Platforms team. This is not a small team. So it was the entirety of the Digital Scholarship Lab, 2 undergraduate students who worked on our XR workshop. We had expertise represented across the library. So we had outreach librarians involved, our head of metadata, our director of research initiatives, our director of assessment, our assistant director of rare books and special collections, our university archivist, 2 undergraduates, and my entire team. In 3 weeks, we put together 6 workshops and we ran them successfully. We curated a ton of information, like a lot of people have talked about in their workshops. They have pivoted to having modules and information online that we could share and use later, and we did that as well. And so all those resources are now there and available. Our intro videos and our faculty showcases are all there and available, and a bunch of resources, and including all of our slide decks and the worksheets that we used for our workshops. So I just want to say thank you to the entire team who were game to play along with this crazy experiment, and it was really fun. And that is a link to all of the workshop resources. I am happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's really amazing what you've been able to accomplish, and I really like your philosophy of what you're trying to do. Please go ahead and type questions into the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Emily, in a couple of our previous sessions, we have talked about how to integrate staff, whether librarians or other staff, into digital scholarship activities, programs, and instruction. Can you talk a little bit about how that goes at your institution?
Sure, it's a great question. And it can be challenging sometimes because sometimes it involves training people up. Sometimes it involves just valuing their expertise. And I'm happy doing both. So for example, we have a new film and media studies and English subject area librarian who started in January. And one of our big digital projects is a video annotation tool. And so I work a lot with our film and media studies faculty. And so one of the ways that we get them involved is we just bring them along. So I would reach out to the outreach librarian if I'm working with one of their faculty members and say, hey, I'm running a project in a class. Do you want to just sit in? Do you want to see what I do? Do you want to just sort of shadow me? And then I try to find ways where they can take on stuff. So if I have, you know, if I'm working closely with like a digital media studies course, there might be a couple of small assignments we're doing. And so I might reach out to the digital media studies librarian and say, hey, I'm working with one of your faculty. Do you want to come in and meet some of your students? Do you want to take on, say, this data viz workshop? Maybe you want to run it instead of me. So I try to find ways where they can start to not just shadow, but take on some more ownership of that. If I'm planning a workshop, like I'm running a workshop for an education faculty member on Thursday, and so the education librarian, I brought her in at the planning process. I already knew what I was going to run for the workshop, but I met with her to talk through how I was going to approach it so that she can then be there and be present. And I said, do you want to run the workshop? And she was like, not yet, but I'll do it next year. And so we try to find models where find ways to train people up, but in a way that they're comfortable.
Great, thank you. Here's a question from one of our participants. Did you coordinate with your Center for Teaching and Learning, or whatever it's called on your campus? Typically, faculty turn to them for lesson and assignment design and don't think to turn to the library digital scholarship unit.
That's a great question. So the first year that I was at University of Rochester, I did reach out to the faculty director for the Center for Teaching and Learning. They're all called different things at different places. And he and I co-hosted the digital pedagogy workshop. And so that was great because faculty trusted him, right? I was a new unknown quantity at the university, but they knew who he was. And he didn't really have a particular stake in the digital approaches, except he used some in his own teaching. And so really he was just there to help facilitate the workshop. I gave him portions of it that, like, if he wanted to run or take point on. So yes, in that particular instance, we have coordinated with them. This particular training series, we have a College of Education that was working a lot with our Center for Teaching and Learning. And they were doing things like how to run Zoom sessions effectively, how to run discussion boards. So the tools that they were focused on are more utility-based in terms of how you do a Zoom class or how you might run a Blackboard discussion. And so the provost really, the assistant provost really felt, and actually people who took both workshops really felt that they complemented each other. We were sort of getting through the pedagogy and the approach and like trying to figure out how tools could help with that. And they were really trying to teach the tools that were helping run an online course. And we were sort of using digital methods to make that more engaging. And so a lot of the faculty who took both felt they were very complementary. It's a good question.
Great, thank you. Another participant asked if you can share links. Oh, if you share your screen again, because this question directly relates to that. Can you share links to the slide decks and other documentation for the workshops you mentioned? And I think you had a bit.ly URL.
Yeah, I just put the bit.ly right in the chat. I think that'll be easier to copy.
Okay, great.
But all of our workshops, our videos are there, all of the handouts are there, the slide decks, all the worksheets, everything.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
The next question, has there started to be communities of practice with faculty you've worked with who could take your training and extend it themselves, a train the trainer type idea? That's an interesting question.
I love that idea. And I would happily welcome that. I don't know that we have faculty who are there yet. We do have faculty though who are interested in the same types of things. So that was one of the nice things about running the thematic workshops. Is like our video annotation workshop had faculty from across the campus who were interested in like thinking about how you annotate with audio and visual materials. And so we've had, one of the nice things about these workshops is we saw some interdisciplinary questions come up and engagement come up that we weren't expecting. I would hope that eventually some communities of practice would develop around some of these topics. We're starting a new extended reality program, and we definitely have faculty who are already starting to engage more in those conversations because there's kind of a new interest in that.
Great, thank you. And your co-presenter, Damecia, asks, what aspects of the work do you find most enjoyable?
It's really fun for me to highlight the expertise from across the library. So I love it when our head of metadata comes in and just blows the faculty's mind. It's so much fun. I like being able to draw on materials from rare books and special collections when we're teaching cultural heritage or when we're doing an annotation. I think it's really fun to say, look at all the talent we have across the library. Don't you want to work with us? But mostly I just like solving problems. I like it when a faculty comes to me with a really like stumped idea and they can't figure out how to get out of it. And I like just kind of brainstorming solutions.
Very nice, thank you. Well, I think that's the end of questions. And so we'll have Damecia bring up her slides and share her screen, and then we'll have more time for questions to her and for both of you at the end. Thank you so much, Emily. That was really engaging presentation. Over to you, Damecia.
All right, thank you. Thank you for everyone being here today. Thanks, Joan, for the invite, and thank you, Emily. I got some really good ideas from your presentation. So again, my name is Damecia Donahue. I am a librarian with the Wayne State University Library System, and I do also appreciate the Overlord shout out. I'm having a hard time getting everybody to catch on to that one, so thank you for that. So what I'll be talking about today is basically engaging the individual in sort of this idea of innovative learning in the 21st century. And so, oh, skipped too many on me by accident there. So sort of this first idea that I just wanted to kind of go over, we're all sort of aware of and have common knowledge of what makerspaces and fab labs are. So they're hands-on, they're meant for exploring, they're all about learning, making, and doing. There's a lot of skills building that happens, they're collaborative, and they're open. So sort of in thinking about this idea of what we know about those, what are some different ways that other people view them? So sort of thinking in terms of a lot of the conversations that are happening, definitely that have become more relevant today than they were probably 6 months ago, a year ago, or 2 years ago, is this idea of ownership and dominance, right? So as with anything, there are usually groups of people or one big group of people who sort of are thought to be the leaders of something, or they're the people that we look to for information, evidence-based studies, and things like that. So this quote is from a website for a Maker Education Conference that will be happening in a few weeks. And I pulled this directly from the website because I thought it was interesting. And again, it's really timely. And it has a lot to do with what I'll talk about in some of the later slides. So this idea of ownership is something that I said to myself in sort of creating the space that I'll be talking about is who owns what and why do they own it? And sort of how can we disrupt the idea of a specific group of people sort of taking ownership of something that really belongs to everybody. And I think one of the ways that that's possible is through positive disruption and taking a look at this idea of difference being visionary. So it's an open-minded approach. As I'll discuss a little later, the space can't really be defined as anything specific other than what the people who come in it actually make it. So one of the biggest way that we're kind of taking the traditional thoughts about makerspaces being open and collaborative and sort of looking at the previous slide and saying, okay, well, how can we give the power back to the people who come into the space or whatever the case may be, is sort of taking a look at the idea of library reference, right? So when we have someone that comes to us in person or someone who has a chat with us virtually, and we're asking questions to try and figure out how we can help them. So how can this space provide us with a new way of doing reference using technology? So we can call that community technology reference. And the idea behind it is simply to allow people the opportunity to investigate technology, right? So we've all sort of, whether we wanted to or not, we've been thrown into this technologically based world, definitely since March. And it's been an adjustment for a lot of people. A lot of other people love it. A lot of people are coming into contact with pieces of technology that they have never seen before and trying to figure out how to navigate the use of it. So what we want to do is investigate that, different types of technology, different tools, different resources, and kind of look at like technological literacy, different ways to collaborate, things related to scholarship, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. So the way that we do that is by asking some common questions, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. We take a look at ethics. And the idea behind it, again, is to empower people to understand that technology is theirs. Technology is not scary. It's an opportunity to have a relationship with technology that you may not have otherwise had. So some of the ways that people engage the space, they may come in and have an idea they want to develop. They may come in and just want to talk about some stuff related to technology. Maybe they have a design that they're really interested in doing. It really depends on the person that comes into the door. So our job is to figure out what they're looking to do. They may not have any idea what it is that they actually want to do when they walk into the door, but by the time they leave out, we hope that they leave out with some type of new knowledge or something that they're going to collaborate with other people on and things like that. So this is an image of the actual tech bunker space itself. So there are two spaces that we have. They're actually, currently I am housed in 2 study rooms. So the tech bunker space is a space that is a little bit bigger. And then the space next door called the vault is a little smaller. So the difference between the two is that the tech bunker basically has pretty much all the technology, right? The 3D printer, the virtual reality headset, some souped up machines, our electrical kits and things like that. And then the space next door, that's called the vault, is basically the space where people can go and kind of just kick back without being surrounded by all of the technology. So there are some pieces of technology in that space. It's not totally full, but it's more of like, I like to call it like a more creative space. We have a lot of people that hang out on that side of the space and do sewing projects. We have a lot of art students that go over there and do artwork and things like that. So it's still very much engaged, but the two spaces kind of offer different environments for different types of people. And one thing that I always make sure is that, yeah, I may be the overlord of the spaces, but they are not my spaces. They're fluid. They are ruled by their visitors. And we want to try and appeal to everyone as much as possible. So there are many modes of learning, thinking, and doing, which is, that's sort of a lot to incorporate into an ideology behind the space. But as long as we allow them to come in and recognize that this is a space that they can make their own, everybody ends up finding their place in the space. So we aren't trying to force anything specific on people when they come into the space. And again, the idea is just to engage the individual. So discovery is huge. And we're also trying to help students specifically realize that they're autonomous beings and they have the ability and the potential to sort of make their own pathways, right? So this is an example of, this always makes me smile because these little kids were amazing. So some of the outreach activities that we've been involved in, we do a lot of stuff with K through 12 in the Detroit and surrounding communities. We also do a lot with a lot of the entrepreneurs and the thinkers and the doers and the movers and the shakers in Detroit and outside of Detroit as well. So I'll just give you a description of what these images are all about. So the one in the right corner, the left corner, is actually a product that a 10th grader created for us. It was the result of a very quick 30 to 40-minute workshop about a tool called Blender. So I have 2 staff that work with me. One is a computer science student, and then the other is, he's not currently a student, but he does work in the community with a lot of the technologists and entrepreneurs and things. So that image is actually a toilet that the student sat down and she said, I don't know what I want to do with what I just learned, but for some reason, I think I'm going to make a toilet, right? And so within like 5 minutes, after a very short, brief tutorial and introduction to Blender, the student created this for us, right? And so I was like, wow, that's awesome. Could I take a picture of that? And she was very excited, and so was I, because just in that 30 to 40 minutes of, learning how to use the tool, how to use the controls, etc., she kind of sat down and within 5 minutes made something that she felt like was her own. And then the picture in the middle and the one that's further on the right is a camp that the one computer science student, her name is Quintessa, that she set up. So it was called STEAM Builders. And what she did is she found a collaborator within the city of Detroit who was trying to work with kindergartners and expose them to technology in whatever way he could. Now, while he was successful in getting the camp established and getting people to sign up, he didn't necessarily have a place to go where he could sort of have the students come in and play with technology, learn about technology, engage with technology. So they got together and I met him. He came in and we talked about, the goals of the program. And so for 2 semesters, Quintessa worked with these students about 10 to 11 weeks each semester. On Saturdays, their parents would bring them in and she would teach them different technology tools. They would talk about how they might be able to use it in their homes. The parents were very interested in it. She used tools like Tinkercad, and then they would come into the space and kind of apply what she taught them. Now remember, these were kindergartners. So they came into the door and they were just amazed by everything that they saw. So Detroit has, Detroit public schools. We have a lot of charter schools, we have private schools, and we have traditional public schools. And the access to information, the access to technology varies a lot depending on the school and the location of the school. So these particular students were students who didn't necessarily have access to a lot of the things that we have access to here on campus. And so they were freaking out and screaming and yelling, and they were so happy. And I was freaking out and screaming and yelling because I was so happy that they were there and that they were having an experience that they otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to have. And then that last image is an image of a chair design that a designer came in and spoke with the other staff member that works with me. His name's Robert. And this person came in and they were going to Switzerland or Sweden. I don't remember exactly which place they were going to, but they were visiting a place out of the country, and they had this deal that they were basically trying to close, right? And so he had his designs of what the chair looked like. So this individual and Robert sort of got together, came up with the concept design, designed it in some 3D software, and printed the object out for him so that he was able to take it with him and introduce his chair design concept to these people that he was hoping to get funding from. So he did reach out to us afterward to let us know that he did get his funding. So we were super excited that we were actually able to help him. Another one of the ways that we are engaging individuals is through the curriculum, right? So these images just show some of the ways that we've helped some of the students across campus. So that first image is an image of one of the neuroscience students that we had come in. So they had scans of their brains and they were working on a research project and they were presenting it in one of their classes. So again, we sat down with them, took a look at the scans, made 3D renderings. We 3D printed those for them. We did full-size brains and we also did half so that when they were doing their demonstrations, they actually had objects that they could use to help describe the research project that they were working on. Then the picture in the middle is from an engineering student that we had come in who was building a car. And he basically just sat down, designed some parts. We talked him through some different processes that would help his design. And we printed off a few different items for him so that he had those for his project that he was also working on in his class. And then that last picture is probably one of my favorite stories I've ever had the privilege of telling. So the student seated, his name is Jashawn, and the student that's standing is Jacob. So Jashawn was an engineering student and Jacob was a communication student who focused in broadcast journalism. So they had both been in the space for one reason or another a few months prior. Jashawn actually came into the space to work on a game that he created. So he had enough technology of his own to develop the game and sort of get it started, but he needed a bit more. So he came into us, we talked about his project, and he ended up finishing the game in the space. He made a music soundtrack for it. It's available for purchase on Steam. It's great, it's awesome. Jacob was working on his senior project and he had come into the space and he was like, this is really cool. Like, I think more people should know about it. How do you feel about doing an interview? And I was like, I'm like, yeah, you can interview me, but it would be so much better if you interviewed one of the students who have used the space to help them create a project. And so I introduced the two of them. They got along fabulously. They recorded the video. And as a result of the video, Jacob ended up getting a job here at Wayne State with our marketing team. And Jashawn, his game, with it being on Steam, someone from Ford actually saw his game and actually contacted him for an interview, and he's an engineer at Ford. And I was like, see, this is the kind of awesome stuff that we love to see happen, right? Because the space is here, people see it, they sort of walk past it, and they're just like, what is that? And they come in and they peek their heads in, and we're like, no, come in. It'll be great. Like, we're awesome. You guys are awesome. Come hang out with us. So we try and keep it as open as possible because, again, the space is whatever the people want it to be. It's not what I tell them it is. So sort of picking up on the connection that Jashawn and Jacob made, we also take a look at what the future of work looks like, right? So we know during this pandemic, again, we've all had to, deal with technology in one way or another. Like I said, some of it's awesome, some of it's not so great, some of it needs a lot of work. So we try and engage the students and the people who come in this way too, right? So the future of work is technical, human, connected. There's something out there for everyone. And it's a matter of figuring out where your interests lie and what you're sort of interested in. Because I think as a librarian, I'm also an educator. So I think that we are obligated to offer services that support the development of like a diverse set of skills, right? Those 21st century skills that pretty much all of us are going to need to have in order to sort of survive in the future. So we think of the space as a new learning system, a new mode of learning, where what happens in the space is totally depends on the person that walks into the space. So one of the ways that we have really been examining the future of work has been with the emergence of esports across campus. So the space launched in 2018, and pretty much as soon as the doors opened, there were a certain amount of students that came in and who again were just very curious about what we were doing. And after doing some reference interviews and figuring out where they sort of like technologically, I found out that they were avid gamers, right? So we ended up having multiple conversations, and what we realized was that there was no real umbrella available for esports on campus. So this group of students got together, they formed a student org, I'm their advisor, and basically what I've done is sort of gotten them seats at certain tables, right? So the president, the provost, the dean of students, our CNIT, and so through the course of probably like a year and a half, we've been able to develop a pretty robust program related to recreational gaming as well as competitive gaming. We also have a gaming lab, a gaming lounge, which I'm really excited about, that will be launching. We had a soft launch a couple of weeks ago, and this was mostly thanks to CNIT and our Dean of Students office. It's in the basement of our student center, and we're hoping to do a lot of K through 12 work, as well as holding some of our recreational and competitive tournaments. And the students, they do everything themselves. There are a lot of different disciplines involved. So we have engineers, we have doctors, we have journalism students, we have digital art students. So they combine all of their talents together, and they've been able to come up with esports on campus. So it's very exciting for us. And then this last slide just demonstrates another way that the students have collaborated with each other across campus. So just before quarantine happened, they were able to offer a conference. And this was a collaboration between the esports student org and the anime student org. So one of the things that we're also doing is trying to introduce this idea of diversity into these ideas. Anime and esports have a lot of connotations to them that aren't necessarily positive. So the students like to produce engaging events to sort of show people, hey, you know, this stuff's awesome. Like, we're having fun, but we're also learning things at the same time. So they put on a conference that they all organized themselves. I did very little. There were probably about 1,000 people who registered, and probably 700 actually showed up. Again, they did all of this on their own, which was pretty amazing. And it was academic and fun at the same time. So a lot of the panelists, some of them were graduate students, others were members of the esports club or the anime club, or just friends of theirs, or you know, we did a peer-reviewed, refereed way for people to submit proposal ideas. Again, they did all this on their own. I really didn't help them with much at all. So that was a very exciting event that we were able to do before we all got booted off campus. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that we're able to do it again sometime soon. So with that, I am done talking on and on about the space and the stuff that we do. And this is just a picture of one of my favorite buildings on campus. It's a Yamasaki design. We have a lot of great architecture on campus. So I just kind of wanted to close with that image. This is one of my favorite places on campus.
Thank you so much, Damecia. You would be so much fun to work with.
I like it.
Please type some questions in the Q&A. You're getting a number of comments about how people love your collaborations and the anime or other characters and the stories that you've told. And I think your favorite story especially intrigued people about the engineering student and the communication student. And have you found any way to use those kinds of stories to do outreach to a greater number of faculty so they understand what you're doing, the kinds of 21st century skills that these students are going to need to find jobs, which will be even harder in today's climate, and how they can start incorporating more of these skills in the curriculum and working with you and others in the library to prepare their students.
Yeah, so there are probably a few different ways that we're doing that. So one is in conversations with the students, I'm always encouraging them to talk to their instructors and their professors about what they're doing when they come into the space, and how it applies to their curriculum, or maybe even how it doesn't apply to their curriculum. So that in that respect, we've gotten a lot of conversations we've had with faculty about how we can incorporate what's happening in the space into their classes. Another way is simply with the idea of doing technology reference. So just a couple weeks ago, there was an English class and there was a computer science student who needed information about the different discourse communities in computer science. So he reached out to me and we had this amazing conversation about computer science, and we ended up talking about different types of technology. And it turned out that this student was very interested in biotechnology. So I was able to introduce him to a number of resources, and one of my favorite books from, I think it's 1968, called The Biological Time Bomb, which is basically like the guy who told us that we were going to be doing biotech in the future, but nobody knew it was happening. So I was able to engage him that way. And the faculty member whose class he's in now wants to do some workshops based on the different types of technology that exist. So it mostly comes from the students. We have, I'm working on some different ways to engage faculty virtually right now. And that's just offering more of an advanced reference service related to technology. So I'm posting in our academic portals and things like that to try and draw more attention to it. And then as far as like the community, a lot of that comes from the marketing that we've been able to get, like with the esports. We've actually attracted quite a number of students, which is amazing, to look at Wayne State as a potential school of choice. And that's just based on the fact that they've heard about our esports program. So it kind of happens organically. And I usually don't have to be, sort of out there forcing the space down people's throats. They kind of just show up for it sometimes, or the students talk about it so much that they become interested in it.
That's interesting because I have heard a number of digital scholarship labs or centers talk about how the graduate students they work with are the conduit to the faculty.
Yep.
So undergraduates as well. And your co-presenter, Emily Sherwood, asked you to, she said she loves your outreach, particularly with the community beyond the college. Can you talk a bit more about how you encourage the community to come in and use the space and technology, and what technology do they get most excited about when they visit?
So definitely it's a toss-up between virtual reality and the 3D printer. Like people just usually love just the idea of those, but then actually be able to use them and put them into play, and we talk about them and we have conversations about it. Usually pretty amazing for everyone involved. So when it comes to K through 12 or, submerging ourselves within the Detroit community, I usually just go places and try and talk to people, or I'll, if we have a mutual acquaintance, I will reach out to them and ask them if they're interested in coming in, and, they'll come in and see the space, and we'll sort of figure out how we can make it work for them. There are also instances where Wayne State does a lot of K through 12 outreach in general. So, networking with people across campus has been helpful. So that's how we've been able to be involved in a lot of the different programming that Wayne State itself does with K through 12. So I have an inroads, and then I go out there and like cold call and just like, here's this, we can help you with this, or if this doesn't work out, how could you see the Wayne State University library system helping your students achieve success?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Please continue to type questions. We have a few minutes left. I'll ask one. I do think that many people are increasingly focused on how to make technologically intensive learning experiences accessible and inviting to all kinds of groups and welcoming. I noticed it was probably in one of the slide on the esports, it's probably very much dominated by male students. And so do you think that it's okay just to have certain things that may be weighed one way or another in terms of various types of diversity, or should almost all the activities be welcoming or have representation from a variety of groups? And if the latter, how do you go about achieving that?
So definitely the latter. And I think that part of the attraction for me in doing this work is that there is not a lot of diverse representation, right? And so there's people come through the door, and a lot of the times I'm just hanging out, like talking to students and stuff. So it seems like there's no authoritative presence in the space, which is kind of the way that I like for it to be. But the fact that Wayne State is such a diverse campus actually helps with that.
Right.
We have people from all over the country. We have people who have various interests. And I think, me being female and me being Black is in itself a draw for people, just because it's not, it isn't so commonplace yet. It will be, women in technology, people of color being involved in technology is increasing more and more. So I think just my presence here and what we're doing helps, volumes with that. And I also think it has a lot to do with reaching out to the community that surrounds us, because we're right in the middle of Detroit. We have a lot of different things emerging around here. Like I said, there are a lot of different schools. So it's just a matter of trying to introduce technology as something that's for everybody, right? So that everybody has a place in it. And I try and talk about things as much as I can when I'm out and about. And when people are in the library and they walk past and they kind of stare, I may hop out the door, just come on in, it's fine. Like it'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll all learn something. So I think that's.
Well, it looks like you've had a lot of success. The other thing I'd comment in terms of your space is, like many spaces that are, especially those that have been reconfigured for digital scholarship or maker spaces, you have a glass wall so people can look in and see what you're doing. And that is the kind of thing that will spark the curiosity of some students or other people on campus. And they may decide they'll just come in and ask. And so I do think showing them or having a literal window into that environment can be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too.
Okay, we have one last question. Love the community engagement and clear inroads with campus groups. Is your success in this area about the space and you and staff, or is it an overall library ethos at Wayne State, a broader integration of campus with community?
Yeah, it's definitely not about me. I don't want it to ever be about me. I mean, I recognize that the space wouldn't exist had I not pushed for it to exist, but it's an organic space, it's an organic community. And so we want to show the library system and Wayne State as places for innovation and creativity and discovery and all these amazing things, because the way that we want our students to graduate is we want them to feel empowered, that when they get done, they'll go out into the world and they'll be able to handle what sort of comes their way, and specifically when it comes to technology. But it's a super interdisciplinary campus. We do a lot of collaborations with other schools. The students are constantly collaborating with each other. We do a lot of faculty student collaborations, a lot of faculty staff collaborations. So just in that respect, Wayne State kind of pushes for that on its own, and we're just sort of providing a different type of service to help with that.
Terrific. We do have one more question, but I'm going to take that after we formally end the program, because I do want to make sure that while many people are still here, that I have an opportunity to thank our terrific speakers, our inspiring speakers, and I thank all the participants for their comments and questions and their attention. Our next webinar is on Thursday, October 1st, so just in a couple of days, and our speakers will discuss issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in relation to digital scholarship.